we can condition ourselves to be wise, but we can also learn how to be foolish. I was leading a Bible study a few weeks back. It was one of these small community groups that we've been starting up in the church over the past year, and the idea was that I would lead this group for a few weeks as the pastor, as the so-called expert, and give the group the tools that they needed to study and discuss the Bible on their own. And then I would depart and establish a new group. So on my last night with them, a couple of folks in the group brought some books that they'd purchased, Bible studies that they'd considered using as a tool after I had moved on. Now, I confess that I'm a bit prejudiced against a lot of these kinds of studies, as they're often published by more theologically conservative authors, and they often rely on a literal, fundamentalist reading of Scripture. So as I picked them up to look them over, I had this knee-jerk reaction. My deep-seated prejudice rose to the surface, almost beyond my control, and I started to criticize these books that people in the group had taken the time to explore. It was really rather ungracious. I neglected the fact that these books, regardless of the author's theological persuasion, still had plenty of good things to say about living as Christ taught us to live, about loving one another, about placing our trust in God. I was too hung up on my prejudice. Without even thinking, I declared in so many words, well, this book says that the book of Daniel was written in the 6th century before Christ, where I, with my fancy degree from Yale Divinity School, happen to know it was more likely written in the 2nd century before Jesus Christ. No, I'm afraid this simply will not do. My assumptions and prejudices turned me into an arrogant jerk. And the worst part is I could see it happening, but felt powerless to stop it. This, I think, is exactly what Jesus is getting at in this sermon. He's holding us accountable for the questionable things that some of us do automatically without even thinking about it, like leering at an attractive woman or flipping someone off in traffic after they've cut us off. And he's holding us accountable because we are the ones who have programmed ourselves to think and behave this way, no one else. If there's baggage in the attic, it's because we let it pile up there. And that baggage could be anything from racial and sexual and theological prejudices to emotional defense mechanisms.